Welcome to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast, which we air every single Monday through Friday at your favorite podcast platform. It drops around midnight, so you can check it out and tune it in. And anytime, of course, it also plays for, as you all know, like podcasts. We talked about this last week. It plays for weeks and longer than that. You know, everything. What is it? Everything on the internet is forever. It's fascinating because one of the things I learned a long time ago was that very simple fact. And I always teach people, don't say anything online, write anything or whatever that you wouldn't want to see as a headline. And I've had some of my words appear as a headline. Kind of a funny story. My father wrote for the Boston Globe. I used to write for wrote for the Globe. I worked for the Globe is what I meant to say. I used to work for the Globe, and my father wrote for the Boston Globe for 40 years. And he would always, in those teenage years when everything's really difficult and everything else, he would always say to me, "Don't you end up on the front page of my newspaper." Well, one time, this is long after my father died. He died in 1985. And one time in the early aughts, I made a critical statement about a certain local college. I won't mention the name of the college, but it is a college, but it's really a university, but it is a college, and it's a university, but you can't call it a university because there's another college with the same name. But it's a college in Boston, and we won't say the name of the college, but it's a Catholic college, which is a college in Boston, you see there. And we won't say the name of the college. So anyway, I made a critical statement. And those words were a headline. And I said, as I'm eating breakfast, would you look at that? My father was always afraid I'd end up on the front page of his newspaper. And now I'm on the front page of his newspaper. Fortunately, he had passed on, what was it? It was 15 years at that point. Actually, it was a little longer than that. And you know how that headline happened? I had, this is back when the Boston Globe, I worked for it when it was owned by the Taylors. That's when it was, a real solid newspaper. But then it was bought by the New York Times. And this was during the Times. And I got a phone call from one of my father's friends who was a reporter. And you know what they always do? It's like, "Hi, how are you? I knew your father," and the whole bit, and da-da-da. And, well, what do you think about blah, blah, blah? This certain college, we won't mention this name, which is really a university in Boston. And we won't mention the name. And what do you think of that? And the whole bit, da-da-da. Well, the next thing you know, my words were a headline the following day. So always be careful what you write on the internet, what you say to whomever, because you may say the wrong thing. And it happens all the time. You see the news stories all the time. People just like, "Wow, why did you say that? Why did you write that on the internet? Why did you do that?" Never say, and which is why you don't see a lot that I write on X. It's one of the main reasons. You're not going to find me saying a lot of, sitting down and write in response, because I know it becomes permanent. And then he said, ba, 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 the whole bit. At another time, I actually said something. What I basically said was a little bit over the edge, but I basically said that, Catholic, I forget how I put it. I should know this. A Catholic school that needs to teach the Catholic faith, and if it doesn't, it should be closed, or something like that. It was well over the line. Again, I was the subject of a column from a Boston Globe columnist. And again, this was long after my father died. And the school, which was attached to the parish I was assigned, wouldn't let me come to the school anymore. I've been literally kicked out of 2 Catholic schools for saying things about either the church or God. In the other case is I said, and they absolutely would not have me back at the school. I gave a homily. I did a mass. I gave a homily. I was talking about how the whole point of God, sending his son and leading us to be free from sin is there is the law, and his son does a workaround in the law. So in a sense, God cheats. And that angered the principal, I learned much later, so badly that he would absolutely refuse to have me on school grounds because I said that. I also added that this was not cheating. This was not cheating because it was allowed. In my high school chemistry class, the teacher, who was very tough, allowed us to basically learn the answers from other people. It was perfectly acceptable in her class. And I couldn't have passed chemistry if I did. And I actually demonstrated how well I know chemistry, which is better than I expected, because of the fact that the teacher was more concerned that we actually learned. And so she did. And the fact that I said that about Catholic education, which a little bit too far, led me to be kicked out of two Catholic schools. True story. So just so you know, so I'm quite familiar with this whole rule. Don't say anything that will end up put you on the front page of a newspaper or whatever. I learned that long before I learned of the internet. So in any case, there you go. In light of that, we're looking at a good example of this from ancient times. Miriam is critical with Moses. And, we talked about yesterday how he was going through a rough time, and even she is critical of him, and she's critical of him because of that he married a Cushite woman. So Miriam is upset, and because of that, she's very critical. He's already going through a hard enough time. And the Lord punishes Miriam and Aaron. He makes her skin become leprous, as white as snow. And this shocks Aaron. And Aaron, and this shocks Moses. And Moses begs the Lord to heal her, which of course he does. But it's a rather fascinating thing. Be careful what you say, because that should be a message for the internet. Be careful what you say. Because if the internet was around the time of Miriam, then in fact she would say, don't say the wrong thing at the wrong time. Because let me tell you my story, and you can still find it on the internet. You can see that, because if the internet was around then, that is the case. But it's a really good warning of being careful of what we say. One of the things that I bring up is, I don't know if you know this, and I've said this in homilies, the church does not believe in freedom of speech. And you might say, well, freedom of speech is a foundation of the American system. Well, in fact, it is. And it's not that we disagree with the First Amendment at all, but it is that if we believe in freedom of speech, we believe in being careful what we say. And the reason why I say the church doesn't believe in freedom of speech is because St. Paul didn't. He said, say only the things that people need to hear. And so that whole idea, well, I can say anything I want because I believe in freedom of speech, it does not hold in Christian circles. And you can see it doesn't hold in Jewish circles either when we see the story of Moses and Miriam. It's not that you have to be careful what you say. There's a great Twilight Zone that is not what the point is, a great Twilight Zone. And it's the one with Billy Mummy, who was just a star everywhere because he was a young child star. He's still around. He was part of Barnes and Barnes, which sang that famous song Fish Heads. He's been in various movies and TV shows. But he was played this boy who had everyone in the whole town terrified, because if you said something that he did not like, he would punish you severely. Punish you I guess you could say ontologically. He would change your being horrendously. And that's what he would do. And it was this tyrannical understanding of a tyrant controlling of speech. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a charitable way of speaking. Always make sure that what you say is a charitable way of speaking, because that's what St. Paul calls us to do. Only say the things people need to hear. So if I were to say something uncharitable, say for example, I were to say something about, a politician, and I'm really careful what I say. But I were to say something about a politician, say whatever, and I were to make this statement, and people find this on the internet and say what he said about such and such a politician, and he calls himself a Catholic. That's the effect of it. But that's why I wouldn't say it, because it could reflect badly on my mission as a Catholic priest. So you always want to be careful what you say, and that's basically the message that we find here. It reminds me of one of the lessons that I give: never send hate mail. Hate mail becomes a gift to the person you send it to, because all the person has to do is say, look at this, he wrote this awful letter, and his or she wrote this awful letter, whatever, in their words. I just have to post it, and people can see what they actually sound like. That's why you never do that, ever, because the words can be used against you. Never, ever do that. One of the things we're going to look at on the other side of the break is the next installment of the interview with Elizabeth Nguyen. She is the sister of Cardinal Thuan, who spent 13 years in imprisonment in Vietnam, 9 of them in solitary confinement. Very difficult story, but he is filled, as the book title says, with hope and joy. The name of the book is Cardinal Nguyen Van Thuan. It is put out by Ignatius Press. It's available at all your favorite bookstores online, and also at ignatius.com, and also your favorite brick and mortar bookstores. So you can check it out. We're going to talk to her on the other side of this break. We're going to go right into it, actually, right on the other side of the break. So you're listening to the Catholic Audio Media podcast on your favorite podcast platform. We'll be right back. You can now leave a message for us, which we can air and discuss on this program. Just call 617-297-7452. That's 617-297-7452. 617-297-7452. Feel free to call, leave a comment, a question, or even feedback, and we may play it on the air. I can discuss your comment or question as well, so give that a try. 617-297-7452, 617-297-7452. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer. Previews of upcoming podcasts. Previews of upcoming columns over at catholicaudiomedia.substack.com. Your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out. Patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media.
And that's the difference.
I've felt that all along. Now, I work in Spanish and Portuguese and English. And of course, some of the theologies that are in Latin America have a very strong connection to Marxism, at least used to. And I used to say that what they're looking for is what Christ is trying to offer, but they don't see that.
That's right. You are absolutely right on the point there. They
Wow.
all go to that, but through many other ways, through killing, through wartime, through putting people in jail and all that. And they don't know that if they only put the teaching of Christ in the heart of all of that social doctrine, like now Pope Leo is flying, then everything will be fine.
Wow. That is so profound. Now, does China understand this?
I I don't think so because, China is so much a huge country, and they have to deal with poverty and everything, and so they needed that authoritarian. Absolutely 100%, and they still so worried that they are still worried. I think that if you let those Christians in, and they are starting to work. And spread the gospel, they're so fearful that it's going to return back to the time when they were colonized. I think they're very fearful of that.
Oh, so they're not afraid of the gospel, they're afraid of colonization.
They're very afraid that, the gospel may tell us that, you can kill people left, right, and center if they go against our will or something like that. Then they may spark protest, and then the political will come in after them. Not only the Christian maybe have good intention, but the moment that they have a group of supporters, the political supporters with another agenda will come in.
Wow. Well, in a sense, that's what happened in the Americas with Spain.
Yeah.
So that's legitimate that they're afraid, but the church would turn around and say, but we're not part. Those days are past. But I'm sure the Chinese don't fully understand it. So as I'm reading the book, I have to be honest. I'm reading the terrible conditions that your brother was in,
yes.
Just real horrible. And I'm saying, how was he able to maintain his faith? Because I really swear, as I'm reading this, and saying, that's it, I'm done.
Yeah, that's right. I think there were days when he was feeling exactly like you, Father.
Really?
Yeah, I'm sure because he said that at time he was, at the edge of insanity, and he said, you know what, Mary, if you want me to die in prison, then give me the courage to go on with all this suffering. But if you think that I still can be of your service, then could you save me out of here? I'm sure there are days like that he was tormented by giving in or continue. It's just that in those very dark moments, I think he said that in those dark moments, the power of God is always there. And so for that, his message is that no matter how desperate we are, just remember, he's just there. Just tell him, call on to him and say, I can't do it anymore, please. And
wow.
That's how I think that's how he was safe and continue to remain faithful to the church. But yes, there are days when he said there were two priests in the same isolation cell, not the same cell with him, but another cell. And one of the communist policemen took those priests and took them over to the cell where my brother was almost unconscious on the ground. And they said, you see, Mr. Thuan, if you want to be as stubborn as he is, then you end up like him. He's going to die in a few days. So,
wow.
Yeah, but, so somehow my brother always said the power of God is so much greater than evil.
I can hear that, but he had to learn that firsthand.
Yeah, he, I think among our ancestors, in my family, my mother's side and my dad's side, you see, we were converted to Catholicism in the 18th century. And so we have martyrs on both sides. My great-grandfather was isolated from his family for years among non-Christians so that he would abandon his faith.
Wow.
but somehow
in Vietnam.
Yeah,
in Vietnam.
So my great grandfather was among the non-Christian way out in the countryside, and my grandfather has to, run I don't know how many kilometers a day to deliver food to him, but the faith remained because they say, well, there were no masses those days in those early 19th century, but then they continue to just pray and remember everything that the missionaries taught them. But certainly the rosary is just like our daily meal. So
wow.
that kept them. Yeah. And so I think my brother has learned so much about that. And the church survived. And our ancestors survived. Some of them were killed, but they persisted. And so I think that example really shed some light in his life, and those moments of darkness, he just clinged on to Mary and to God.
Now, for those who are listening, he spent 13 years in prison, 9 of them in solitary confinement. And the conditions were, he was in darkness. He was in, there was moisture in the cell. There were insects, and weren't there like rodents too, and rats and stuff?
Oh yeah, he said that. Yeah, he said that. Oh yes, snake and everything, and rats came in. They walk around, but there is nothing to eat because he has nothing to eat anyway. So he said then, and I was too sick and too weak, so they run around and they get out.
Oh, so even the rat said this isn't the place to be.
No, there's nothing there for them,
Yeah, isn't that so? And he had to. I was trying to imagine this. There was a hole in the floor that allowed him that if he stuck his nose to the hole, he could smell fresh air.
Yeah, but it's not so much fresh air. Some oxygen maybe, but. He said that is where all the soldiers went out and relieved themselves in
that's
that
right,
part
yeah.
of the garden. So then it's really awful smell. But he said at least there is some air for me. Otherwise, it's just very, awful in there. There's like an oven.
One of the things that as I'm reading this, I'm. In a sense, I'm praying to the Lord, how can you allow such intense evil?
Yeah, I think when he said, I asked him, and he said that in such an evil, you recognize in that atmosphere of total evil, hatred, you recognize what is it on that cross that Jesus carried. That's all the evil he carried. And so we recognize in that the face of Jesus crucified.
I got a sense of that, but it just blows my mind that people could be so evil.
Oh yes, and even now, if you want, you look in the early 21st century, or even now, you know that there is such a thing around the world still going on.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a great movie out called The Railway Man. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
I know. Where can I see it?
It's wonderful. I'd highly recommend it for your students, for religious for any age, actually, I suppose teenager up to any age. And it's about a man who was tortured in China, I think, or somewhere around there, during World War II. Yeah. And it's a true story. And he eventually reconciles with his torturer. Did the Cardinal reconcile with anyone who mistreated him while he was in prison?
Totally.
Really?
Because when they the congregation of canonization have a very big event, the ceremony to close the cause. It means they have already enough document on his life, so now they close, and then they will examine all of those documents. So at that event in Rome, many of his former prison guards came to give testimony.
Really?
Oh, yes.
Really?
And, send me your email. I will send you some of their testimony. And I took them into the, at that time, the Office of Justice and Peace on Trastevere in Rome to meet with Cardinal Thuan. And so Cardinal Thuan said, talk to me about that friend, that person that now you call friend. Tell me about that Mr. Thuan that you call friend. Tell me about his life. And the former guard in the isolation cell in the early 80s said, yes, we know that the Jesus that he believes does exist, because whatever he does for us is out of love. He taught us languages. He was very polite and very good to us, and he taught us how to sing. He really shared every time that anybody sent him a little bit of medication or something. He shared with us if we needed, and we know that he said, if he's not loving others, then he's not a disciple of Jesus. So we know that Jesus does exist.
So, and this is while he was imprisoned by those same guards.
Yes, the same guard, and they still alive in Hanoi, and every year around the day that he passed away, the 16th of September, they all go back to where he was in house arrest, and they all go back there to some of them converted to Catholic faith, but some of them never did. But they still going back there to remember the man that they call friend.
Wow.
Yeah.
That because I mean, are you familiar with the story of Walter Ciszek?
No.
He was imprisoned in Russia, in the Soviet Union. He also was a priest. And your brother's experience, as bad as Walter Ciszek's was a lot worse.
Yes, I don't really know about this person, this priest that you mentioned, but I would like to read about him. But I know that my brother on the deathbed in 2002, and I said, Francis, if all of the things that you endure, is it really worth it? What is it that you would you be doing that all over again? And what is that for? I asked him that question, and he said, simply to see the face of God, who taught us on, And but he said that, in prison, I really saw the face of God in the sufferings of other people. I saw the face of crucified Christ.
We're going to be back tomorrow with more of the interview with Elizabeth Nguyen. We will also discuss tomorrow's liturgical readings, because tomorrow is a unique day. It's not a holy day of obligation, but it is a powerful celebration. Tomorrow is the feast of the Transfiguration of the Lord. The irony of that, of course, is that the whole key of the feast is we see this bright light that is the light that is the transformation, or the transfiguration, rather, of Jesus, Moses, and Elijah, but it's also, unfortunately, the remembrance of the great bright light that was the bomb that landed on Hiroshima, same exact day. So it is a powerful day in the church, powerful also when we learn about all that evil that led to everything that happened in World War II, and then we see the evil that happened to Cardinal Thuan, but how he was able to, in God's grace and with God's grace, overcome all that evil. We'll learn about that tomorrow. In the meantime, have yourself a blessed day.